Listen, I need you to hear me today, because a whole lot of women are confused by a man's silence. You're sitting there asking yourself, if he craves me, if he wants me, then why is he so quiet? Why doesn't he say what he feels? And you start thinking something must be wrong with you. But let me tell you something right now. His silence is not always your fault. Sometimes that man is fighting a battle you can't see. See, a lot of men were raised to believe that emotions make them weak. They learned early on that expressing desire, showing vulnerability, or admitting they care too much is a risk. So he goes silent not because he doesn't care, but because caring scares him. A man can crave you so deeply that it shakes him. It puts him in unfamiliar territory. And when a man steps into territory he doesn't understand, the first thing he does is pause, not talk, think, retreat. Silence is the only language he's fluent in when his heart starts speaking louder than his head. But here's the shocker. The silence is often a sign of how strong his feelings really are. When a man feels something casual, he has no problem talking. Casual is easy. Casual don't cost him anything. But when he feels you pulling on him in a way that makes him imagine a future, makes him show up as a better man, makes him realize what he could lose if he mishandles you, oh, that's when he gets quiet. That's silence. That's fear whispering in his ear. Don't mess this up. When a man goes silent, most women immediately assume the worst, that he's losing interest, that he's pulling away, that the connection wasn't as real as it felt. But the truth is, silence is often a man's first response to fear, not a signal that he doesn't desire you. Men are taught from the beginning that emotions are dangerous territory. They're told to be strong, to be steady, to keep their feelings tucked away where nobody can question their toughness. So when a man starts to feel something deep, something real, something that shakes up the routine he's used to, it triggers a kind of internal alarm. He doesn't run because he doesn't want you. He runs because he does. Fear shows up quietly in men. It's not emotional outbursts or long conversations about their insecurities. It's withdrawal. It's hesitation. It's silence. When he craves you on a level he's not prepared for, he shuts down to analyze the emotion, to control it, to stop himself from doing something reckless like admitting how much he feels before he understands it himself. That silence is him trying to get a grip. He's wrestling with the idea that someone has entered his life who holds power, real power to affect him, and power scares him. Not because you'll hurt him intentionally, but because love makes him vulnerable, and vulnerability feels like exposure. A man who craves you deeply starts imagining things he didn't plan for, a future with you, responsibilities toward you, expectations he might need to rise to. Suddenly he's questioning whether he's ready, whether he's enough, whether stepping forward might lead to failure. And men fear failure in love more than they will ever admit. Silence becomes the shield he uses until he decides whether he's brave enough to face what he's feeling. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the overflow of it. He's silent because he's overwhelmed, not because he's empty. Sometimes the fear comes from past wounds. A man who's been hurt, betrayed, or rejected before learns to approach emotion with caution. So when you show up kind, consistent, supportive, and real, it triggers memories of what went wrong in his past. Craving you becomes complicated. His heart steps forward, but his mind pulls back. He needs time to determine whether he can trust what he's feeling, whether you are safe, whether this connection is worth risking the guarded life he's built. The silence is him weighing that risk. And then there's the fear of losing control. When a man craves you intensely, he starts noticing how much his mood shifts around you, how his day feels different depending on your presence, how your absence leaves a space he can't ignore. This level of influence shakes him. He's used to controlling his environment, his reactions, his emotions. Craving you disrupts that balance. Silence is the only tool he knows to steady himself again. So when he goes quiet, don't rush to blame yourself or assume he doesn't care. Often, his feelings are louder than his words, and silence becomes the only way he knows to process the weight of wanting someone so strongly. When a man's emotions start rising to a level he hasn't mastered, he does something that confuses women every single time. He retreats, not because he doesn't feel anything, but because he feels too much and doesn't know what to do with it. Men are not naturally trained to sit in their emotions, sort through them, and communicate them in real time. They're trained to fix things, solve problems, and act only when they fully understand the situation. But when emotions hit hard and fast, especially emotions connected to a woman he truly desires, it throws him off balance. He steps back not because he's uninterested, but because he needs space to make sense of what he's experiencing. Deep emotions put a man in unfamiliar territory. Most of his life, he's been told to stay in control, to stay logical, to not let feelings dictate his actions. But craving someone affects him in ways he can't always explain. It speeds up his heartbeat, makes him think differently, gives him new priorities he never knew he'd have. Suddenly, the idea of you becomes more than just attraction, it becomes possibility. And possibility is scary when he's spent years convincing himself that feelings are safer when they're kept at arm's length. So his instinct is to pull back, to study the emotion from a distance, to make sure he's not being reckless with his heart or yours. When he retreats, he's not rejecting you. He's trying to understand what's happening inside of him. He needs to figure out why he's thinking about you more than he planned to, why your voice changes his mood, why the connection feels stronger than anything he expected. That level of emotional intensity forces him to examine himself. It makes him question whether he's ready to show up in a way that matches what he's feeling. A man knows when a connection requires maturity, effort, and consistency, and he doesn't want to move forward until he's sure he can rise to that standard. Retreating becomes a moment of internal preparation, not abandonment. And emotions don't just make him think, they make him vulnerable. When a man feels deeply, he risks losing the control he's used to. He risks being seen in ways he normally hides. He risks caring so much that your opinion of him suddenly matters more than he's comfortable admitting. Vulnerability is not natural for him, and when he senses it growing, his immediate reaction is to step back and protect himself until he understands whether the vulnerability is safe. That pause, that silence, that distance is his way of building emotional armor while he figures out how to take it off again. There's also the pressure of expectation. When he senses the connection is real, he knows it comes with responsibilities he can't ignore. Being emotionally involved means showing up consistently, communicating honestly, and giving you the security you deserve. Men often retreat when they feel unprepared to meet those expectations. They'd rather take a step back and regroup than move forward and disappoint someone they genuinely care about. His retreat isn't a sign of apathy. It's proof that he's wrestling with emotions strong enough to make him pause, reflect, and steady himself before he steps toward you again. Some men are absolutely terrified of the idea that they might not be enough for the woman they desire. When a man craves you, he's not just thinking about the moment or the thrill of attraction, he's imagining what it would take to show up fully for you. That means providing emotional support, financial stability, protection, respect, and consistency. The stakes feel high to him because he knows that love isn't just about feelings. It's about action, responsibility, and the ability to meet your needs in a way that honors who you are. So when he steps back into silence, it's often because he's questioning himself, questioning whether he's capable of being the man you truly deserve, and questioning whether he can rise to the level that love demands. In his mind, craving you and not being ready to meet your standards is a dangerous combination. He feels the pull, the desire, and the emotional connection, but he also sees the gap between where he is, where he thinks he needs to be. That gap can feel overwhelming, and the natural reaction for many men is to freeze. They retreat into silence as a way to protect themselves from failing. Silence becomes a buffer, a pause button that allows him to think, strategize, and work through his insecurities without risking rejection or disappointment. He's craving you, but he doesn't want to bring you into a situation where he feels unprepared because his love is serious enough to carry the weight of responsibility. Self-doubt is a heavy burden. Many men have been conditioned to believe that needing help, admitting fear, or showing insecurity makes them weak. So when they crave you, these insecurities intensify. They start questioning everything about themselves. Are they successful enough? Are they strong enough? Are they emotionally intelligent enough? Are they mature enough to give you the love you deserve? These thoughts can paralyze them, leaving them silent while they sort through the storm inside. What may look like disinterest to you is actually a man's struggle to align his inner world with the outer reality of what he wants. Fear of failure also ties closely to fear of judgment. A man who deeply desires a woman he respects or admires doesn't want to reveal anything less than his best. He's aware that you see potential in him, and that potential feels like a responsibility. So he retreats to avoid showing a version of himself that isn't polished, ready, or sufficient in his eyes. Craving you without confidence in his readiness makes him hesitate, and hesitation manifests as silence. There's also a level of reflection involved. While he's silent, he's evaluating what love really means. He's considering whether he can provide a stable foundation, whether he can protect your heart, and whether he can match your expectations with action, not just words. This period of internal processing is necessary for him to make sense of the intensity of his feelings. A man who takes the time to sit with his emotions and assess his readiness is often more likely to step forward in a meaningful way once he's confident he can handle it. Craving you isn't simple for a man who doubts himself. It's not just about desire, it's about responsibility, self-assessment, and preparation. And while his silence can be frustrating, it's often a sign that he's taking the time to align his inner readiness with his outer intentions rather than rushing in unprepared. When a man feels something casual, it's easy for him to talk. He can text, call, flirt, or joke around without overthinking it because casual feelings don't carry weight. They don't demand responsibility, they don't challenge his self-image, and they don't require him to step into vulnerability. Casual desire is light, playful, and low risk, which is why men have no trouble expressing it. You can see it, hear it, and feel it because there's no inner storm that complicates the emotion. Words flow easily, attention is consistent, and actions follow naturally. Casual attraction is loud because it doesn't threaten him, it doesn't require him to be more than he already is. But deep, meaningful feelings are a completely different story. When a man starts craving a woman in a way that could change his life, his behavior often becomes quieter. That's because the stakes are suddenly higher. Love, respect, and commitment require him to show up fully, and showing up fully requires courage, preparation, and self-awareness. The man realizes that if he missteps, he could hurt someone he genuinely cares about or fail to meet her expectations. Deep feelings create pressure, and pressure often manifests as silence. He may text less, pause before responding, or withdraw emotionally, not because he's losing interest, but because he's recalibrating himself to match the depth of what he feels. When a man feels strongly, he also begins to see the future with you in it. He starts imagining possibilities, responsibilities, and life changes that he never considered with casual relationships. That vision excites him, but it also scares him. He has to evaluate whether he's ready to handle what he imagines. And until he feels equipped to face those responsibilities, his first instinct is to step back and reflect. Deep feelings are intense, and intensity can be uncomfortable. Silence becomes his method of processing emotions without acting impulsively or saying something he might regret. There's also the fear of vulnerability. When a man feels deeply, he risks exposing parts of himself that he normally keeps hidden. He risks admitting needs, desires, and insecurities that he's conditioned himself to suppress. Casual attraction doesn't demand this kind of exposure, but meaningful desire does. The louder the feeling, the more he fears the consequences of revealing it before he's ready. Silence is a protective mechanism. It allows him to manage the emotional risk while still feeling the pull toward you. Another factor is his sense of responsibility. Deep feelings make a man evaluate what he can give, not just what he wants. He asks himself, can I provide stability, love, and security? Can I meet her expectations while staying true to myself? Can I navigate challenges without failing? These questions weigh heavily on him, and until he can answer them with confidence, he may choose quiet observation over verbal expression. So when a man's attraction is loud, casual, and carefree, it's easy to recognize. But when his desire is deep, meaningful, and life-impacting, it's often quiet. Words may be few, actions measured, and attention intermittent. This silence is not a reflection of lack of interest, but rather a reflection of the seriousness of his feelings and the careful thought he gives to how he approaches someone he truly values. You cannot force a man out of emotional hiding. No matter how much you love him, how patient you are, or how hard you try to draw him out, a man will only speak when he's ready. This is not a reflection on your worth or your appeal. It's a reflection on his internal process. Men process emotions differently than women, often internally, quietly, and with great caution. When a man retreats into silence, he's not punishing you or playing games. He's navigating feelings he may not fully understand, feelings that require time, reflection, and courage before he can articulate them. Trying to push him to speak before he's ready only creates tension, pressure, and sometimes resentment, which can drive him further into silence instead of closer to you. Men fear vulnerability because it exposes them. When a man craves someone deeply, he risks opening parts of himself that he normally protects. Expressing desire, admitting emotional needs, or showing fear of failure are all acts of vulnerability, and many men have been conditioned to avoid such exposure. He may want you desperately, but until he feels safe enough to risk being truly seen, he will remain quiet. Pressuring him to break that silence doesn't accelerate his readiness, it just makes him retreat further. His silence is a boundary, a way of managing emotions without losing control. And respecting that boundary is essential if he is to eventually speak from a place of honesty and intention. Silence is also a tool for self-assessment. When a man feels strongly, he often steps back to evaluate what he can bring to the relationship. He asks himself if he can be consistent, reliable, and supportive, and whether he is capable of meeting the needs of someone he truly desires. These are serious considerations, and he will not rush them. A man's internal timeline is not dictated by your patience or your expectations. It is dictated by his readiness. No amount of coaxing or prodding can substitute for the time he needs to align his intentions with his abilities. When he finally emerges from silence, it will be with clarity and purpose, not hesitation or confusion. Some women try to fill the silence with assumptions, speculations, or emotional confrontations, but this rarely works. Assumptions often misinterpret the root cause of his quietness. Silence does not always mean disinterest, but assuming it does can create misunderstandings. A man who is silent because he cares deeply may be misunderstood as being cold, aloof, or distant. Recognizing that his silence is part of his process allows you to approach the situation with patience and perspective instead of frustration or doubt. Ultimately, forcing communication before a man is ready is counterproductive. Emotional readiness cannot be imposed externally. It must emerge internally. A man will speak when he feels secure in his feelings, confident in his intentions, and ready to risk vulnerability. Until then, silence is not rejection, it is preparation, reflection, and sometimes fear. Respecting his process demonstrates maturity, understanding, and trust, all of which are crucial if he is to eventually communicate from a place of authenticity. The key is to understand that his silence is not a void, it's an internal conversation. It's him wrestling with emotions, evaluating his capacity to show up fully, and deciding how to approach someone he truly desires. Forcing the dialogue interrupts that process, but giving him space allows him to emerge when he's prepared to speak meaningfully and intentionally. A man who truly wants you will eventually act, because craving alone is not enough. Desire may stir feelings, fantasies, and longing, but action is the proof of intent. Men can feel strongly and still remain silent for weeks, months, or even years. But when a man reaches the point where he is ready to show up fully, you will see it in his behavior. It might start small, a thoughtful message, a spontaneous gesture, consistent attention, but over time, his actions will clearly demonstrate that his feelings are more than words, more than fleeting attraction. Action is the language of men who care deeply, and it is ultimately how you know that craving has transformed into commitment. When a man is silent, it may feel frustrating or confusing, but silence is rarely permanent. Men are wired to act, to solve, to move forward once they've resolved the inner conflict that kept them quiet. Deep desire triggers introspection, and introspection eventually leads to decision making. A man who truly wants you will eventually decide that waiting, hesitating, or remaining in the shadows is not an option if he wants to be with you. That decision manifests as action, consistent, deliberate, and intentional movement toward building a connection, showing up for you, and proving through deeds what words cannot always express. It's important to recognize that action may not look perfect or arrive on a predictable timeline. Men often operate differently than women expect. The first sign may be small, almost subtle, but it will be unmistakable if you pay attention. He may prioritize your needs, make sacrifices, or go out of his way to be present in your life. These actions, though sometimes quiet or understated, are louder than any words he could have spoken in the early stages of his silence. A man who acts demonstrates not just desire, but courage, the courage to step forward despite fear, vulnerability, and uncertainty. Sometimes the weight can feel unbearable because you see the craving but not the movement. That is the moment to remember that readiness is internal. A man will not act until he has aligned his feelings with his capacity to follow through. Craving alone is messy and unreliable, but action is deliberate and intentional. When a man begins to act consistently, you can trust that the desire is real and that it is paired with the determination to make something meaningful happen. This is the distinction between wanting someone and being willing to show up for them in every way that matters. Action also reveals priorities. A man who truly wants you will rearrange his life to make space for your presence, attention, and happiness. He will not just talk about you or think about you. He will demonstrate through choices, time, and effort that you are important. That is why action is the ultimate indicator of truth. It cuts through doubt, uncertainty, and the mixed signals that often come with silence. Understanding this allows you to stop overanalyzing a man's quiet moments and instead watch for the evidence of intention. A man may crave you silently for a time, but when he's ready, he will act. He will step forward, show up, and prove that his feelings are more than a thought or fantasy. Action is the culmination of desire, the point at which craving transforms into reality. And it is ultimately the truth that reveals whether he truly wants you.